The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Hey there, listeners. Before we get into this week's very special episode of PSVG Prime, we want to say thank you to all of you listeners out there and your Patreon supporters, of course. But as you know, we are just kicking off the PSVG September to Remember, and we've already had some great memorable things happen. Per Schneider appeared on the Nintendo Shack board with Video Games released their 100th episode. Huge congratulations to those guys. They also announced that they're adding a new Patreon exclusive show, Board with Everything. So pretty awesome. And tonight we have another surprise for you, but we'll leave that for when we talk about it on the show. But we do have to say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Each month they get access to some pretty cool things. PSVG DLC, Arcadia Academia, Kevin Hates Everything, now Board with Everything, as well as being entered into our Patron of the Month giveaway. Current offerings include a $20 Apex Legends credit. You can get NBA 2K Playgrounds 2 on Nintendo Switch, or $20 to the eShop if you're choosing, and of course, the highly coveted PSVG black polo shirt is still available now. To get in on all the action and to help support us, head on over to patreon.com/PSVG. As you know, we say this all the time. We don't do PSVG to get rich. We're certainly not making money off the Patreon. But what it does is it allows us to do cooler things, reinvest in this show that hopefully all of you love. So thank you to that. And because of your support, this is how we're able to do these really cool things all September long. So big thank you to Edwin Callow, Barry Cathcart, Josh Barboni, Chris M., Devin Tyus, Paul Calico, Kyle Heyman, Benny Lou, Joel Voss, Professor Switch, and all of the other Patreon supporters out there. We do this all for you. But now, let's get on to this week's episode of PSVG Prime. You, I promise, are going to love it. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's very special edition of PSVG Prime, the flagship show of the Play Some Video Games podcast network. It is I, your host, Kevin Austin, and with me as always is the Raymond Kenny to my Aiden Pierce, Mr. Lucas Rose. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're not alone. It's a special show.
We're very not alone.
We're definitely not alone. So continuing on with the Watch Dogs theme, we couldn't do this without a Marcus Holloway. In Mr. Devin Tyus, sir, how are you?
I am chilling. It's hot, y'all. Like, I don't think y'all understand. Well, actually, you probably do, but it's still really, really hot.
Well, I mean, you're in California, so yeah, you get that.
I'm ready for fall.
You might as well be a world away from me. It's almost fall weather here now in Michigan, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Lucas
has 100 degrees today still.
You have the pumpkin spice lattes out. Lucas is ready to go. He's got his Ugg boots on.
Pretty much, yeah. Wearing sweatpants every day. Yeah. I mean, I do that all the time, but I just fit in with everybody else.
Well, at least you're wearing pants tonight. And lastly, I mean, come on. You had to know this was coming. We had to throw a wrench in the plan with Shawn Baichoo. Sir, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Excellent. So, listeners, if you're not familiar with his work, let's catch you up. Sure, we all know game designers, coders help a game and character move, come alive and such, but that's only half of the work. Behind that, another piece of the puzzle, if you will, is the actor that gives the human connection, the emotion, the life, the voice to the character in-game. This is where Shawn comes into play, having voiced characters in multiple Assassin's Creed games, Far Cry, Deus Ex, Outlast, the Shaun White series, Rainbow Six, For Honor, it goes on and on, but the highlight for me, easily one of my favorite game characters this generation, is the Wrench from Watch Dogs 2. But that's not it. He's a certified badass stunt fighter, choreographer, trained in martial arts background, including a black belt in Shotokan karate. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. As well as other styles of boxing, Muay Thai, Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. Your resume is insane. I just have to say that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. You guys check out his IMDb. I'll link it. If you're not familiar, just look at his resume. It surely is nuts. So I guess to start things off, how did you end up on this journey with martial arts and fight choreographing? I mean, that's different. Like growing up kids were like, hey, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer, did you just say like, I want to kick ass?
Not per se. My parents actually were always very adamant about their kids being active, me and my two sisters. So they enrolled me in soccer. I didn't really like it. They enrolled me in competitive swimming. I wasn't too crazy about that. But then they enrolled me in karate, and I loved it. So I started training in karate for about 5-6 years, got my black belt. And that kind of sparked my interest in martial arts. I've always been a big fan too of Eastern martial arts in general. The movies, action movies, all that stuff. I grew up with all those things. So I kind of kept practicing, and I actually started doing fight choreography on my own, just with my friends. It's pretty dangerous stuff now that I look back. Now that I know what I'm doing, and I look back, we were relying heavily on just like skill and a bit of luck and the naivete of youth, if you will. We did some good stuff, but it was really dangerous. And then I went to theater school, where I studied to be an actor. And in the course of those studies, my stage combat instructor, a woman named Kim Barfus, was a wonderful woman who kind of opened my eyes up to the world of stunt fighting and stage combat, because they teach that as part of the curriculum. And it's something I'd always, you're aware of it in movies. You're aware that people aren't really punching each other out, but you never really stop to think about necessarily about how they do it. You know what I mean? And there was quite a lot to it. So she was at the time training at a certification place called an organization called Fight Directors Canada, which is the Canadian Stage Fighting Association, I guess, the official one. So I went to one of their workshops, a 2-week intensive, got certified with them at the time as an actor, combatant, I forget the term, but basically, an actor who knows how to fight. And from there, I just started, I kept practicing, studying other martial arts, and just kind of gradually learning more and more about it, and then doing it with friends of mine who also did stunt fighting or stage combat. I gradually started teaching stage combat, which I still do to this day. So I started teaching people how to throw a punch or fall down, etc. And then projects just kind of came to me, which is funny because I never set out to go, I want to be a fight choreographer or I want to be a stunt guy. I just thought that stuff was fun, and before I knew it, people were like, hey, can you come teach us what you know at this school, or to these people, or to coach these people, or hey, this play is doing, Henry IV and they're sword fighting. Do you want to come, do the sword, the choreography? And that all kind of culminated because, it's a pretty small, tight-knit community of actors here in Montreal. So people really know each other, look out for each other. They know what they can do. So this really great guy who's a voice director here, and actually the president of ACTRA, our union, ACTRA Montreal, Simon Peacock, his name is, he suggested me to someone at Eidos who was working on Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. And I got the job as the fight choreographer for all of Adam Jensen's takedowns during gameplay.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was an amazing job. Mostly based on the strength of someone's recommendation, because the guy he was talking to was like, well, we need someone who knows video games and who, knows how to fight, but knows how to choreograph, but also who knows motion capture. Simon was like, Shawn, I know just the guy for you. So yeah, I met with them and that went off really nicely. And I'm really proud of the work I did on that. They had asked me initially for, I think it was 80 different takedowns. So
wow.
Seated, guard is seated, guard is standing, around the wall, through the wall, with cloak, with the Tesla, with super strength, fatal, non-fatal, all these different combos. And I was so excited and passionate and inspired. I know I sound like a psychopath because I'm talking about violence here. I was inspired, but it's an outlet of creativity I really enjoy. If it's fake violence,
right?
I'm not a fan of real violence at all. But they asked me for 80 takedowns, and I think I wound up delivering 200.
Oh my god!
Wow. So about going above and beyond.
Yeah, well, because they'd be like, okay, seated, we need 5 seated takedowns. And they'd be like, okay, well, this is cool, and this, and this, and this, and this. Oh, and this, and this. Oh, I've got 8. Let me just send 8. Right? And then we need 3 of these, but I'd have 6. Or we need, just 2 of these. I'm like, yeah, but these 4 are really good. So, not to brag or anything, but, I had a high volume of creativity for this project. So, they stripped it all down in the end. I think only 50 or so made it to the game because of, memory or space constraints or, game changes or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of how I just kind of got pulled from one job to the next in, fight choreography and also as stunt work as well. Like I do stunt, not as much as I do acting, but anything that's fighting, falling down, anything hand to hand, weapon handling, guns, swords, other weapons that I'm really good at, and I can do stunts for that. I just don't do the more dangerous stunts like, stair falls, high falls, live burns, car stunts. Because, I don't want to die.
That's a good reason.
Right?
I'm passionate about fighting and stunt fighting and martial arts and weapons and all that. So that's what I focus on. And I leave the more dangerous stuff to the more competent, trained guys who've studied that aspect of stunt work. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into stunt fighting and choreography. It's almost completely detached from my path as an actor. But at the same time, in the early days at Ubisoft, when I'd be working on like the Assassin's Creed games or whatever else, it would happen on occasion that we'd have to do some instant of violence, a guard being taken down or someone getting shot in the neck with an arrow or whatever. That happens a lot in those games. And and so they'd ask me on the spot to choreograph something, to put something together, instead of having a whole big stunt day and getting a whole bunch of people. So I got, known as the guy who could provide that as well. So often when I'd get hired on a job, and this was same thing for Eidos, they'd hire me to do a speaking part, but also do some non-spoken parts, guards, whatever, and also do some light stunts. Just kind of take advantage, I guess, of my versatility and my skill set when it comes to motion capture, especially. So because it's a small community, it just kind of, everyone gets to know everyone after a while. So I kind of became known as like the mocap guy, the actor guy who can do some stunts. So that's kind of how I found my niche, I guess.
Nice. So when you're doing those like the stunt coordinating and the motion capture, you talked a little bit about Deus Ex and gaming, but also for film, is there a difference when you're doing the stunt coordination for that? And you kind of talked a little bit about the process. Does the process differ at all for film versus gaming? And do you have any challenges that you face in either one of those categories, film or gaming?
They're definitely different. I haven't done a whole lot of stunt coordination for film. Like I've never worked on a feature. Whenever a movie shoots here that has stunts, they go with, the career professional stunt guys. There's like maybe 3 to 5 of them in Montreal that we always work with, the guys who, like when X-Men comes here, they'll be the stunt coordinator for X-Men, for example, or, whatever movies shoot here that have a lot of action or violence.
Right.
So
there's always the package people. Like there's always the guy who brings the guy who knows the other guy, and then everybody knows each other. Yeah, exactly. I can see that.
These guys have their teams, they have their gear. This is their focus, their specialty. My focus is mostly performance, acting, voice, mocap. It's like I have a specialty in stunts and choreography, but it's very selective. I did do something close to those. I did fight choreography and coordination for a web series called LARPs, which came out a few years ago by a company called Bean Duck. It's really fun web series about a bunch of friends who do LARPing, which is live action.
Yeah.
But it's a really great. You guys actually should really check it out. There's 2 seasons. I'm in season 2. I have a small part in season 2 as this awesome, crazy, off the wall character named Harold, who's like a steampunk player. He's great. He's really fun. And but most of the work I did was as a stunt fight choreographer for the second season. So there's some pretty elaborate fight scenes where the LARPers fight each other or fight, NPCs and stuff. So to me that was on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Admittedly, but similar to being to a movie shoot. So the chief difference is in motion capture, you have a lot more leeway and latitude for stunts. And because of that, the risk factor goes down quite a bit because you don't have to actually risk your health, right? I can swing a baseball bat to clock you in the head. On film, I'd have to swing and miss you by about 6 inches and have the camera at a certain angle to mask the hit. It's called blocking, right? Mm-hmm. And that'll make it look like a hit. Throw in a sound effect, and you're good. In mocap, I can be 2 feet away from you. Swing the bat, you react, we capture all the data, and then when we process it, we just move those two figures together. We just cinch them together, kind of rearrange the space between them, and you can have really vicious connections and hits and all that. When I did the takedowns for Deus Ex, that's exactly how it worked. Some of the stunts were like, I come around the corner, punch a guy in the stomach, grab him, lift him up in the air with one arm, and then one arm body slam him on the ground. And it's a cool move, and I'm in pretty good shape, but I can't one arm pick up body slam a guy who's 165 pounds, right?
Right.
And I couldn't find any kids who wanted to do it, strangely enough. So what we wound up doing is I would do the motion, and then we had like a dummy that we would kind of throw around at the same time. And my friend would stand, I would throw around the dummy rather, and my friend would stand like next to me, and he'd go through the movements as though he was being grabbed by me, but him being in control, and like slam himself down, like throw himself up and then slam himself down onto a mattress, for example, on a mat, like a crash mat. Yeah. And then they just kind of merge those two data sets together, and you have you still have realistic movement, but no threat to the actors. So it's easier to do stunts, I find, in mocap because it's easier to cut. There's no camera per se to worry about. Like mocap has anywhere from 12 to 60 plus cameras involved, infrared cameras. Infrared. Wow. And it's just they're bouncing beams of infrared light off your markers and back into the receptors that are on the camera.
The little dots, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those little golf ball looking things that are on the.
We got a question from a listener named Caro, and I think we've all probably asked ourselves this question when we've seen someone wearing all these little balls or the dots or whatever. So is it a suit, or do they actually stick them on you? Do they itch? Do they fall off all the time and you have to mess with them? What is that like?
So the mocap suit is like a lycra spandex type of material. It's stretchy. It's very form-fitting.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds great.
I personally don't find them uncomfortable at all, but I'm used to wearing them. And how can I say this diplomatically? I guess it depends on your body type.
Yes.
Right. Some body types can wear skin tight clothing more comfortably than others. I'll leave it at that. So in my case, I love it. I feel like a superhero. It's like I'm wearing
yeah, that's what I was going to say. You either look like a superhero or Homer Simpson.
There's no middle ground.
No.
Homer was Pie Man, though. He was kind of swole that one time.
That one time.
But you have to have, a certain amount of self-love and self-confidence because, it does expose you a little, I guess. As a career actor, I'm used to being vulnerable and exposed in all sorts of situations, so I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about that stuff. But I've seen maybe predominantly with women who haven't done it before come in, and the first time they walk into the suit-up room, they have this kind of wide-eyed deer in a headlight look where they're like, "Oh my God, like everyone can see every part of me." It completely covers you. There's nothing indecent about the suit. But it does make you hyper aware of your body, and consequently, I guess you would imagine other people would be hyper aware of your body as well. But, the environments I work in are super professional. Everybody's, no one's inappropriate. Everyone's very, reassuring and competent, and, every possible And comfort is afforded the actors, if they feel uncomfortable or they need anything. It's never, people are there to work. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
you suit, you pull it on. You can wear an undershirt so it doesn't chafe. So it's not itchy. I wear like a compression shirt underneath, so I don't have it directly against my skin because it might maybe with the sweat and all that kind of give you a bit of a rash. And you do get hot in them because they're fitting, right? And not the most breathable material, but like when I wear a compression shirt, it kind of wicks the sweat out. Those Under Armour shirts kind of wicks the sweat out, and you're not trapped in this like sauna suit, let's say. And the exterior of the suit is made of a material that is compatible with Velcro. So once the suit is on, they will tighten any excessive or folded parts of the suit or stretch it out to make sure that there's nothing bunched on your body. Because you really need the markers to be faithful continuously to where they are in your body.
Sure.
Like to not shift around. That'll shift the relation of the points to each other, and it'll screw up the data. The computer won't be able to tell, is that your arm? Is that your leg? Is that the other guy's leg?
Yeah.
It's very, very, very sensitive. So once you're in the suit, they'll then put on these markers. So those little balls, if you will, they're not as big as golf balls. I said golf balls earlier, but they're more like maybe the size of the tip of your thumb type of thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Pretty small, actually, then.
The dots that they put on the face, do they fall off, and how often do they have to be reapplied? Because when they do the motion capture for the face, they're also capturing like your facial movements, right?
Correct. Well, that's actually something slightly different than mocap. That's called performance capture with the face, and they're not markers on the face. We just use not a pen, but like some kind of water soluble, like a mascara or something to do dots. We'll just put the dots. Face, and then the camera can track those dots and their relation to each other to get the data of like how your mouth and eyes move, etc. So the markers that go on the suit, they're covered in a reflective material that's meant to bounce the infrared light off and back into the cameras. So they'll put all the dots. I don't know how many they put on us, maybe 30, 40, something like that. And they put out all your articulation points, elbow, wrist, shoulder, then across your chest, your back, your hips, your legs, your knees, ankles, just so that when you walk into it's called the volume. When you walk into the volume where you do all the shooting, the place is ringed by cameras, this giant empty space. You can see a monitor, and on the monitor you'll see it's like a point cloud, I guess. It's like all these little white points just hanging in space in 3D, but they form like a skeleton, if you will. The actor, not an endoskeleton, more like an exoskeleton. Right?
Yeah.
For a second, because the dots are on the surface of your body; they're not inside you. Okay, right. Here, swallow these markers.
Terrible coming out.
Yeah, I'm gonna track that as well, guys. Yeah. I guess you need the data for some things. But you have all the markers on you, and they have to be in very precise relation to each other. It's actually quite a specific thing the technicians do. Like you get markers, then you get double checked, then you get verified. Because if you're getting bad data or screwing up the computer, then you're wasting time, and time is money, especially in a mocap studio. It costs a lot of money because it's not just me in a suit and a guy at a computer. We have like someone on sound, we have the production manager, we have the 2 or 3 technicians running the computers, we have the set assistant to provide props, to resuit you if you lose a marker. They do come off on occasion. We'll secure them with these little Velcro patches that have like a hole cut out in the middle, so the markers will fit through the hole, and the patch will go over the base of the marker to keep it secured to the suit. Okay. Yeah, and there's some that are padded more so that if you're doing, say, stunts or something with a lot of movement, they won't like crinkle and crackle because they do make a bit of noise, and audio can pick that up sometimes and ruin your audio. So once you're all suited up, then you do something called a ROM, a range of motion, where you go into the volume, do all these movements like a routine that work all your articulation points so the computer can get an idea of your natural range of motion. So if the data comes back that your arm's pointing back, 45 degrees, the computer knows like, okay, that's not normal. Or some just horrible broke his arm, and he's taking it really well.
Would you like me to call the police or the ambulance?
So,
no, computer, he's fine.
So it's you do the range of motion, and I don't know if you've ever seen this when they show like footage of people doing motion capture, but something called a T pose, where you kind of stand on either side, and that's meant to be like a base position, so that whenever the computer starts to lose track of what dots what in relation to what, you T pose, and the computer knows like, okay, I know where all the markers go in that pose, so it kind of resets your data. So that's why you T-pose at the beginning and at the end of every take. So it's actually quite technical. And then to comment on the whole facial thing, when you wear a helmet, a motion capture helmet, it has cameras pointed at your face. They put dots on your face with, like I said, a mascara pen, and the cameras record the movement of your expression. So you don't have to exaggerate it. You just act as naturally as possible, which is wonderful now with mocap. You don't have to exaggerate, just be, which is awesome. Especially for actors who haven't done any mocap, they can just kind of slide right into it.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a mic attached to the helmet as well that picks up your dialogue. So when it's capturing your face, your body, and your dialogue, that's called performance capture, because it's capturing your entire performance. So on occasion, often I'll do motion capture. So I'm playing a palace guard, or a monster, or a civilian, or a merchant who's just waving at the player character to come sample his wares. Any of those things are just the mocap suit, because you don't need a lot of facial data. More and more games are using performance capture for everything, just because you just get a lot more information that way.
Very nice. Wow. So with that in mind, like, how did you get into voice acting? Like, with your background in martial arts, it seems like a natural fit to go into the stunt and the fight coordination. But like, what drew you to the voice acting? Did you have like a knack for making voices or impersonations? Like, were you the class clown or anything in high school?
Well, yes, actually, to most of what you just said. I should specify that voice acting for me, and for most actors I know who do voice, it's just a facet. It's just an aspect of everything else we do. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a voice actor. I mean, I do voice acting, but I'm an actor because I do film, I do television, I do theater, I do dubbing, I do original voice for animation, I do video games, I do motion capture. So the voice acting is like an opportunity that pops up as part of most of the opportunities I'm offered as an actor. I mean, I have an agent, and she's a wonderful woman, and she'll submit me, projects will come to her desk, and she will submit me for various projects based on what she knows of what I can do. So she's like, oh, they need someone who can fight, I'll put Shawn in. Or, oh, it's a cartoon show, and Shawn's good at voices, so she'll suggest me. It is indicative to me that I've kind of drifted into the fields in my career that the ones I work the most in are the ones I'm best at, right? So, I mean, I like doing film, but I don't do a lot of film. I don't get a lot of, or any, like, leads in movies, for example, or television. If I'm on TV or in a film, I'm the paramedic, the cop, the detective, fun parts, but that's about it for me, Whereas video games, I can get leads or supporting characters. Motion capture, I could play like a whole bunch of characters, a whole bunch of different characters in the game. The voice gig I had today that I went to before this podcast was they called me, and I didn't even know what the project was. They're like, Shawn, you worked on this a few months ago. I'm like, oh yeah, right, okay, cool. Then they played me like a reference of the voice I did for a character. I'm like, oh, okay, I remember that. So like I did that. And then they're like, okay, I need you to do this character, and you're like this, I can't give it away, but like this weird, like not like, oh, you're a mailman, it's like you're a rock monster barbarian, oh yeah, you stand rock monster barbarian scenario, and it's like you got to come up with a voice right then and there, and you got to do the lines properly, and we didn't have a lot of time, but those are all things I'm good at, right? Yes, I was the class clown. I was the guy they picked on until they realized I had more value to the bullies as someone who made them laugh. Then they stopped picking on me. I've always been really good at doing voices. I'm really good at imitating voices, like impersonations or copying voices or tones. Dialects as well. I have a real facility with dialects, so I've played and done voice work for dozens and dozens of dialects. That's not, Canadian guy. French Canadian to various American dialects to British to Mexican, Iraqi, Asian dialects. Like I've done, not on film. Obviously, I don't play Asian people on film, but I've played on occasion. Like I did a Japanese accent once for a part I played in Deus Ex, for example. Sorry, no, not Japanese. It was Chinese. I think it was a Mandarin accent or something. But the point is, like, that's always been my facility. And same thing with physical stuff. My strength is in copying things I see, like getting inspired by them. So, I do play a lot of video games. I love video games. I've always been a big fan. So I kind of also know what's expected of that type of performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of merge all that together. So when opportunities pop up, the ones I excel at, that I'm best at and most passionate about, I tend to book more at least. So yeah, I find myself getting a lot of motion capture work, a lot of voice work, a lot of dubbing work. Those are like my fortes. So yes, I'm absolutely a voice actor, but it's never something I pursued. It's just something I was more successful at, say, than film or let's say theater, which there isn't a ton of here anyway, and it doesn't pay all that well. The main theaters do, but there's like only 2 major theaters here, and that's a whole other kind of kettle of fish to fry. But it's the things I've become successful in are the things I love the most. So to me, it's perfect. I don't have any regrets about the aspects of my career that aren't as flourishing. And the advantage is I'm really diversified in what I can do. So in any given week, this last week was super hectic for me, and I got someone calling me saying, "Hey, we're doing a web series. Can you come be a stunt coordinator?" And then it was like, "Hey, can you come audition for this dubbing series by Netflix that's coming to Montreal? And we want to find actors to do the parts from, I think, Portuguese into English or something." They do the translation stuff. But it's always different things as opposed to film audition, or commercial. So, and I get more excited when I hear I have a mocap audition or a voice audition, because not only am I good at those things, but I have more success. So the feedback loop is, I'm like, oh, I have a better chance because of it of succeeding.
Right.
And again, because it's a small community here, people really know what you can do. And the guy who called me into the job I did today was 100% certain I'd be able to handle everything they threw at me. And he was right. Again, not to brag, but I did a really good job. I'm really happy with what I did. The client was super happy. He was laughing, laughing when he was supposed to laugh, rather.
Right. That's what matters, really.
That's a much better feeling than the alternative.
Yes. Yeah, that one doesn't happen too often, thankfully.
So out of all of these characters that you have given life to, that you have voiced, do you have one that's most memorable, or maybe your most favorite that isn't necessarily like what people say, oh yeah, you did this voice? It doesn't have to be the most popular one. What is your personal favorite? That's
a great question. You see that all the time with celebrities, like Elijah Wood, be like, Frodo! He's like, I've done other movies. Excuse me. There's my one. But, I've seen actors like really, really appreciate people like seeing their indie work or stuff that had more value to them. I mean, people can get famous for playing, famous characters, but it might not have as much value to the actor, like they much prefer this, deep dive into the duality of man that he got to explore.
Right.
Indie type of thing. Now, there's less of that I find in the video game industry. Not to say they're not well-written games, but and they're getting more rich and more complex characters, which is awesome. But for me personally, I don't think I have a single character I like the most, because so many different characters I've played mean different things to me. So like Machiavelli, for example, who I played in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, he's the first mocap character I've ever played. So he was my first time doing mocap, also doing such a large role because he was pretty present in the series. So he has a really special place in my heart, also because I was all over that game. I was Machiavelli, I was Father Maffei, I was Duccio, I was also like people in the game, like guards and soldiers and stuff. So whenever I see Machiavelli, it reminds me more of a time than an experience, or let's say. Whereas Outlast, the first Outlast game, that's the first lead I ever got in a video game. And you know, when I showed up to the studio, I booked the game, but my agent either didn't know or didn't tell me who I booked. So when I showed up, my audition was okay. I didn't think I did great. So when I showed up, I'm like, they're just gonna give me like a soldier or some schmuck who gets like, works in the first act or something.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to the director because I know him. Just before we go in, I'm like, who am I playing, by the way? He's like, you're the lead, dude. Like, I'm like, what? He's like, the lead guy. And I'm like about to step into the studio to start recording, Not that I needed to prepare much anyway, because you don't get the text beforehand or anything.
Right.
But it was, it was such a, I had a giant smile on my face, that's for sure. I didn't know that you're the main, it's like having a lead in a film, like I probably enjoy video games more than I enjoy movies by this point. So to me, to have success in that field, to me, is as valuable as being successful in movies. There's less fame attached to it.
Sure. Because
it's less of you recognizably use your voice, your body, which I use a lot of, but people don't, see me walking down the street and go, that guy moves like Machiavelli. Are you Shawn Baichoo? Whereas you can recognize a star instantly. But I also don't mind it because I love having my privacy in my life. And not that the stuff I've done makes me famous or famous enough for that to be an issue if I was recognizable. But being famous it changes your life, and not always for the best. Like it's your privacy tends to go down the toilet. You tend to attract more and more people to scrutinize your life, which increases the chance of you getting people who are a bit unwell or who project onto you certain unhealthy expectations, or you know what I mean. I've been really lucky that the small fandom I have on Twitter and Instagram, they're all like super nice, super supportive people. I'm talking to some of them right now, actually. This is why I do this, actually, is because this community is so wonderful. I don't ever feel like people are trying to take advantage of me, or no one's ever really been inappropriate or crossed the line with me or had expectations of me, or because people tend to claim ownership almost sometimes of people they enjoy, especially when YouTube and social media brings creators so much closer to the user, right? It used to be, I go to the theater, I pay some money, I sit in the theater, I see Arnold Schwarzenegger on the screen, he's the Terminator, awesome. But in my mind, I'll never meet him, I'll never see him, I'll never talk to him. Maybe at a red carpet, I'll wave at him, you know what I mean? Maybe if I scream Arnold, he'll look over and shoot me some finger guns, and I'll be like, oh my God! Type of thing. Now, I can tweet at Arnold. Be like, hey man, I love Terminator stuff. Or I could be a douche about it, because people do that too. So I wouldn't stand in line at a movie theater and wait for Arnold to come out and go, I think you suck, right? You wouldn't do that because you got to face him and there's consequences potentially. But, social media kind of strips all that away. So it's great because it gives this immediacy of access to creators, and the return for the fans is awesome. And for the creators too, like to me, communicating with fans has been an awesome 99.9% positive experience. Fan art, opportunities, real, tangible friendships, like the whole deal. I had a friend come to Montreal this last weekend from England because she came to visit, and she's someone I know entirely through Twitter.
Wow.
And hung out 3 times, right? Because I was in town and I happened to be free, and took the time to do it.
Mhm.
So all this to say that it's very positive, but the negative part is people tend to sometimes get a bit carried away with asking for people's time, or
Yeah.
most people will be respectful, ask me questions if they want. Great, I'll engage, and then they'll respectfully be like, anyway, man, have a great day. Thanks for talking to me.
Mhm.
Take your time, type of thing. Whereas some people are like, ooh, I have your attention. Great. As long as you answer me, I'm just going to keep asking questions. Sometimes you kind of have to like parse that out a bit, and you know what I mean? But again, it's been a really, really, a really wonderful thing. So I went on a huge tangent here talking about social media. What was the initial?
Is this a bad time to bring up that I have a script I've been working on that I want to send your way?
Yeah, that
Got great voice acting
99.9%. Yeah,
Just
that
read it to me right
99.9%
now.
good.
Go. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that 99.9% good. The reason it's not 100% is because at this moment right now, Lucas
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
script he
sorry.
wants to send you.
0.1, dude.
0.1% finally in my life.
I've got this treatment I want to send your way.
Yeah, just trying to get it off the ground. I think this thing's got wheels, really go places.
But
No,
that's
no.
joking aside, that is something I do get asked quite a lot is, how do I become a voice actor? How do I get into mocap? Either from people online or just up and coming actors here in Montreal. And I'll take time to talk to people, give them feedback, meet with them, or coach them if people want to shell out for that and get some quality one-on-one that'll help them book roles and stuff. It's something I do. When I went through the theater program at Dawson, they set up a mentorship program where they hooked us up with established working actors that we could, call up, meet with for coffee. This is before social media, so you couldn't like text message them or anything, but,
Right.
Meet for coffee. Hey, can you give me tips on getting an agent? Or what do you think of my CV? Or what would you do in this situation? And I really, really appreciated someone kind of helping me transition from the safety and security of school, where you always have a part, you have a part to play and lines to learn, to the yawning chasm of nothingness that can be the acting industry if you don't know what the hell you're doing. It helped kind of transition me, ease me into doing that. So it's something I've always wanted to kind of give back in a sense. So I tend to take the time to talk to people and help people out and, see what I can do. It is funny though that when people do ask me in earnest, or I think in earnest, they're like, how do I become a voice actor? I'm like, okay, well, you gotta, do you have any theater training experience? No. Okay. Well, do you have an agent? No. All right. So you can take some voice lessons and, maybe take some dramaturgy classes and then, get yourself a voice demo together and then get an agent. And usually by the second line, their eyes have glazed over, right? As
I don't want to do all that.
Yeah.
I think they're hoping I go like, oh yeah, next time I go into the studio, why don't you come with me? And I'll like,
Right.
something,
Can I just piggyback off you?
That's, and it doesn't work that way. I'm not likening voice acting to like, neurosurgery or anything, but doctors aren't like, hey, why don't you come take a cut on the patient, try it out, see what you do. You know what I mean? I mean, lives at stake clearly when we're voice acting, but there is quite a lot of technique to it. Like, you mentioned earlier, you did a lot of voices as a kid. Yes, I did. But that was my basis, my starting point. From there I learned, text analysis, dramaturgy, concepts in working a scene like status or what do you want, motivation, tactics to get, like body language that goes with text delivery when you're doing physical acting like motion capture or film or theater, all those other aspects, improv, movement, dance, singing, theater history, even all these things I studied in school, which in the moment I'm like, who cares about Renaissance Italy? Like, well,
turned out
Machiavelli did.
You never know. And the ability to kind of apply what works for you to your craft. And then you add to all that experience, just life experience. Just get out there, fail 100 times, fail 200 times, get rejected, get self-doubt, have an existential crisis, do whatever you need to find your fortitude, to pick yourself back up again, to find your successes and to build on them. Something I've been able to consistently do in my career, which, if I consider I graduated in 1997, so I've been at this for over 20 years, working as a professional actor, I'd say maybe for the last 12, which means the first 10 was, oh, you're an actor, cool, what restaurant?
Yeah.
That's true for me and everyone. Some knocked out of the park right out of the gate. Other people worked hard and made it. Some people never made it. It's different for everyone. But I put in my time, paid my dues, had my failures, had my doubts, did those indie films for free, made those connections, wrote that script that went nowhere, did that indie theater festival and had a tremendous hit, or did that one and fell flat on my face. And all these things kind of build together and make you into the actor that you are eventually. And then when opportunities show up, I find the older I get, the better I am at assessing an opportunity and my worth, like in regards to that opportunity, I guess. So actually it comes full circle with what I was saying earlier. Something my mentor told me, this wonderful man named Marcel Genet, who's a wonderful Montreal-based actor, does theater, film, video games, the whole deal. I ran into him some years later when I wasn't really calling on him anymore for mentorship. And he said, how you doing? How's it going? I said, it's going well. And he said, it gets easier, doesn't it? Right? And that's not a concept that I ever really thought about. I'm like, no, acting's hard. You're always, up against impossible odds. And, it's almost like playing the lottery in a sense. But he was right. It does get easier because you get more confident and you believe in yourself more. And, the more what I was going to say earlier is that the further I get in my career, every time I stop and look back, I've always gone up, right? I've always climbed more steps towards, whatever. There's no top. I made it. I won acting. Right. I'm done. It's not a thing, but, I have to keep pushing myself further and upwards to keep working. I think the challenges I face as an actor is to always keep doing more stuff, but I'm always moving upwards. Like if you look at a financial, like a growth chart for like a company's stocks or like an investment you have, there'll be dips, but it's always trending upwards, unless it's like Enron or something, then but it trends upwards. So when you're in those dips, it can be hard. I said existential crisis earlier. I wasn't kidding. I don't make a habit of this, but shortly after my wife and I bought a duplex with some friends of ours, my really good friend Greg and his spouse Allie. So they own the downstairs part, we own the upstairs part, and we share the yard and the basement. It's a wonderful arrangement. They're really good friends of mine. We game together, so it's great. Nice. We have our space. We have communal space as well. Anyway, so I had moved in. It hadn't been long that I had moved into. I had a mortgage for the first time in my life. I had a mortgage to pay, and I woke up at like 3 a.m, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm an actor? I just bought a duplex? Like, am I crazy?
How am I going to pay for this?
How am I going to pay for this? There's no guarantee. I may never work again. You know what I mean? It's funny. Sure. This was before I actually got wrench, I think. So go to show how wrong I was. But it's just the weight of the realization of the uncertainty of what I do kind of can come crashing in sometimes. Because, it's not like I passed the bar, I'm now a lawyer, there will be work for me. Right. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's going to be a low season in Montreal, not a lot of work. And the 4 projects that do come, they're just not, I'm not right for them, or they don't want to see me for whatever reason. I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too handsome. You never know.
It's true. It's true. You got to know the tool set you're working with, and understanding that as an actor is probably the perfect way of doing it. So speaking of tools, back to wrench. So sure. I'm going to steal a little bit here.
Oh, that segue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. That's what I do here. Very, very punny. So guilty pleasure here. I'm gonna indulge myself here. So wrench, my favorite character in Watch Dogs franchise by far. Hoping somehow he ends up in Watch Dogs Legions. I don't understand how that would even work, but I don't care. I'd love for it to happen. Spoilers ahead, everybody. throughout most of the game in Watch Dogs 2, he's like the main source of comic relief and provides some of the most memorable moments in the game. But there's one certain mission where it's drastically different. Watched is the mission where he loses his mask. There's no jokes at all in this portion. You see him for the first time, like really see him, and there's a birthmark or scar prominent on his face. It's the first time you realize how layered and developed his character is, especially for what would be considered a side character. Yeah, a very main character, but ultimately you're not playing as him except for like one mission.
Yeah.
What guidance did you get in the process about the character of Wrench and his persona? Like background, did you have any input in how it came to be? Like, or was it just like, here's the lines, make it happen?
That's actually a really good question. My path to playing Wrench wasn't like your standard process to getting a part. That, you know, usually when a game is being made, they'll do something called a vertical slice, which is I don't want to condescend if you guys know absolutely what I'm talking about, but for those who don't know what I'm talking about, a vertical slice is like a thin slice, a thin portion of the game that has a bit of characters, some gameplay mechanics, a bit of world development, like a bit of, you know, so you see what the graphics are like, what the gameplay is like, you know, it's like, so like a mission, let's say in Watch Dogs, Watch Dogs 2, a mission would be a vertical slice. You get to see how the protagonist handles, maybe a bit of parkour, some hacking, a bit of shooting, a bit of team chat with DedSec, and then, you know, there's a little cutscene to introduce it, maybe ends with one, and then boom, you're done. And you make vertical slices to kind of sell the game to the heads of production.
Sure.
So they were making a vertical slice of Watch Dogs 2, which was meant to go to the producers, who would then take a look at it and go, we like this, we don't like that, change this, keep that, et cetera, et cetera. The person in charge of – it's a bit convoluted. I don't want to make this too long a story. So basically, I worked on the first Watch Dogs as well. I had a few small parts in it. I'm the guy with the tattoos on his face who gets stabbed by Jordy at the beginning of the game in the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
Guy with a gun, and then he threatens him in prison later when he's getting beat up. That's me. I also played like this pimp who's getting arrested in stadium. Bunch of guards and a whole bunch of living world characters. So people on the street, a lot of those spying missions when you see people in their apartment doing all sorts of weird stuff. I was often the guys in that in those scenes. Yeah, very creative, very creative. So I worked on the game, and then when they did, I believe it was some DLC for the game, the one with T-Bone, I forget what it's called, Bad Blood. Yep. When they did Bad Blood, I worked on Bad Blood, and the guy who directed Bad Blood was the guy who was like assisting on the first shoot, but he was now directing the second shoot. And then that guy was in charge of the vertical slice for Watch Dogs 2.
Oh, nice.
So when they got the script, he said, I know the perfect person to play this guy, Shawn. I worked with him before. I like him. I'm sure he could do this. And what's interesting about that choice is Wrench was initially written as kind of more what you would expect based on his looks, a gruff, tough, you know, a muscle, you know, the muscle who kicks ass, you know, he's rare. And the director is like, that's super boring and super predictable. And why don't we take this exterior and merge it with something really unexpected? I guess a subversion of expectation, if you will. So that's what he did. He transposed, and, you know, because he also knew my comedic side, my ability to improvise, my physical comedy skills, because that had come up jokingly during the other shoots or for certain things we did. So he's like, I want you to cut loose, just go crazy. And I never get the chance to do that. It's always too big for film, too big for TV. And games are usually very serious. I don't play guards or like, whoa, I'm crazy, right? So it was a dream come true. So I just gave it my all, and, you know, in all modesty, I think I really killed it as Wrench. Yes. And they had someone else had been cast initially as Marcus. They sent that up the chain, and I left the production thinking I did a great job, but they're not going to keep me. Once they produce the game, they're going to get a more known celebrity, someone, with a bit more clout to sell the game. That's the trend nowadays, is to try to hire more voice actors, which isn't always the best idea, but it depends on the project. Mm-hmm. So, I just kind of put out of my mind. And then next thing I knew, my agent said, look, they're keeping you. They want to keep you as Wrench because they just love your performance so much. And I do remember when I left the studio, I remember thinking, they can replace me if they want, but if they are going to, good luck, because that's a tough act to follow. Again, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but that particular combination of energy, physicality, and comedy, you don't encounter that very often. So I thought I brought something to the character that you probably wouldn't find very easily. And I was right. They did recast all the other parts, but they kept me as Wrench. And I was the only local Montreal hire. Everyone else was from Toronto, New York, Vancouver, which is customary. Ubisoft tends to get actors from outside the city. So that was wonderful. So I kind of got kept on as Wrench. So he evolved through that kind of organic process where the director and I discovered him together. He actually, careful what you wish for, had to scale me back a bit. Some of it was just too crazy, right? But we really found his tone pretty easily. And we had a lot of freedom to bring our own ideas and how to interpret the text. And once the writers knew I was on as Wrench, they actually, I think 2 of them, started retooling and writing new or different text for Wrench based on my vast love and knowledge of pop culture and nerd.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Huge nerd, right? So when he writes, could win in Predator versus Alien, I didn't come up with that, but I know exactly what it's talking about. You know what I'm saying? Well, the Yacha stick is so that that's very me, so. And I banter continuously with the writers. We talk about, He-Man and video games and Transformers and G.I. Joe and role-playing and science fiction and Star Wars, and you name it. So they had such a wealth of stuff to mine from my fertile imagination, from my sensibilities. A lot of it made it into the script, to the game. To their credit, I never really came up with oh, guys, do a bit about this, right? Whatever they brought, I was just so on board. But a few things I got to change or tweak a bit, and mostly just interpretation things. Like a good example is, I think in one of the videos, I think it was in one of the preview trailers for Watch Dogs, there's a shot of Wrench kind of bending at the hip and doing after you, big arms, and Marcus is like, well, why thank you? He does a little skip. He walks right, like that, for example. In the script, it says Marcus is talking to
Tara.
Thank
there
you.
We go.
Yeah, no problem.
3/4 of your listeners are all screaming Satara right now. I just lost 50 followers. No, I'm kidding. So he's talking to Satara, and it says, his dialogue, her dialogue. And then it says, Wrench walks up to them, says, hey, man, the car's ready. And then Marcus says, cool, let's go. And then he's like, all right, see you later. And then Wrench leaves, and Marcus follows him, right? But I see that, and I'm like, okay, but there's so much more you can do with that, right?
Lame.
Yeah.
Right. Shoot it. I walk up and your carriage awaits, sir. Do the whole thing. And, Ruffin, who played Marcus, is one of the most generous actors I've ever worked with. He is so present. You can throw anything at this guy, and he will just take it and run with it. So he seamlessly, that was one take, I'm pretty sure. He seamlessly kind of just picked up the ball, ran with it, and off we skipped. And it made for a nice little character moment.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And, things like that kind of fist bump they do a lot throughout the game. I came up with that. I just said, hey, man, we need some if we're buds, we need some kind of thing that's our thing. Because I have that with my friends, we have a handshake or a thing we do when we see each other. Or, if my friend says something funny, fist bump them type of thing. So, all these little details we added in to flesh out the world and our relationships to each other. The director was really open and encouraging of us to do that. kind of thing. So, and also like Wrench's relationship with Josh, like I fell in love with John, the actor, in the shooting of this thing, because he's one of the most wonderful, generous, caring men I've ever met. So open all the time. So we like really hit it off. And we're really good friends now. Like we hang out. He finally moved back to Montreal from Toronto, so we hang out now, which is great. But like all this stuff with Josh and Wrench, we just kind of improvised. See, we had this nice, again, a history we developed between us that I think is never focused on in the game, but it's there.
Yeah.
And what I love is the details are there. If you look for them, they're there. So when it came time to do the mask scene, I initially, my approach was a lot more emotional, a lot more vulnerable, and a lot more devastated. And Jean-François Rivard was our director, who was a wonderful, wonderful man, who does not get enough credit for really being the glue that just assembled DedSec and had us work so well. The glue and the oil, though, because like that well-oiled machine of DedSec, like he did such a great job of giving us like real tangible relationships and moments in the game. So he was really good at restraining me, just pulling me back a bit and letting me loose at all the right times. Like his instincts for that were great. And as an actor, that's my favorite thing, is direct me, challenge me, give me notes, give me, goals to attain, and then let me bring in my own version of that, my interpretation of that direction. And then you get this triumvirate, right? The Holy Trinity between the writer, the director, and the actor, which to me, is greater than the sum of its parts. That without, if I was writing it, it wouldn't be as good. And if I was directing myself, it wouldn't be as good, type of thing. So you add those two elements to it, and you get these really heartfelt performances. So he really grounded the character. That moment between Marcus and I was really intense. And there was a few more in the game too, like when, spoiler alert, Horatio dies, that whole bye thing. Like we were all like bawling our eyes out when we shot it, just because, believe it or not, the actor who played Horatio didn't actually die.
That removes the whole sentiment of the whole thing. Yeah, geez, I'm over it now.
Completely.
Pop out, guys. But just because we had this wonderful synergy, and no one was afraid of being vulnerable, of being open, that we could all go to this really heartfelt place. And again, I thought that was really captured and made it into the game in a lot of ways. So a lot of our, even our lighter moments too, joking, or when they're doing the launch of the satellite there, and then Wrench is like keeps bugging people, like, or when I'm like, we're gonna watch the Cyber Driver preview. Like, I love that stuff. Just kind of worked on it organically. The director just let us kind of do our thing, and then he just steps in, little tweak here, little tweak there, a couple technical tweaks too, because we'd have cameras in this space filming us to kind of help them cut the scenes together, which they do sometimes in mocap.
And you can definitely feel all of that, like with the characters, like just how close like it was between the actors. Like you can feel that when you're playing the game, like they really feel real, which you don't get a lot of times when you have multiple characters. Like they all felt genuinely real, like they could be real life people, and they had this relationship, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the game.
And Watch Dogs 2 kind of opened in the shadow of the first Watch Dogs because of, whatever controversies surrounded that game release, but also character plot, performance of certain characters and stuff. Like not everyone was on board with everyone or with Aiden or whatever. I enjoyed the game quite a lot.
Me too.
And not just because I was in it, but, I enjoyed playing the game. I loved the concept. I had high hopes that it'd be some kind of Assassin's Creed tie-in futuristic thing.
Still waiting on that. Still waiting on that.
You never know. But because it had this kind of tainted aspect to it, I think it hurt Watch Dogs 2 pre-sales. Yeah. So the game did well, but it only did well later when word of mouth got out. Yes. People were like, this game's a really good game. And, they enhanced the hacking and the graphics were better. But the one salient thing that always came back to me as people's favorite thing was always the same thing, which was DedSec, the supporting cast, the relationship to each other and to the main character, the player's investment in them. Like countless people telling me, like every time I got to the hangout, I'd go and talk to each character.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Completely unnecessary to the missions. They're not mission givers necessarily. It's just exposition. But people are like, oh, I talk to Wrench as much as possible because I can't get enough of talking to him. And plus, every time I recorded something for Wrench for these things, there's always these wonderful, irreverent, crazy, funny, things I got to do. And I don't know how to say this and not sound like an ego case, but I'm just going to say it. I think it's a testament to, the appeal of Wrench that the guy who played him, who did his lines in studio, when I played the game, and I'd go up to him and I'd talk to him. I'd like laugh and I'd be like pleasantly surprised because I don't get to hear the result of my work until I play the game, right? They don't do like a screening like with a movie where like we're gonna play through 40 hours of gameplay and show you everything. Get comfortable. So it was, yes, I'm being critical at the same time and be like, oh God, I hope this came out well. But with him, like I just got to relax and just enjoy the performance to the point where, I'd seek him out. I'd do the same thing players would do, and I don't think it was for narcissistic reasons because I like to hear myself talk, but I think it was for this. It had the same appeal to me that it had for other people, so I understood that appeal. And I think an additional thing that Wrench has that makes him appealing is, I call it the Iron Man effect, right? When I was a kid, Iron Man was my favorite hero because I could be Iron Man. Anyone could be underneath that mask. Anyone could be in this, right? I didn't build him, but if Tony Stark showed up and said, here, take the suit, then I could fly around and be Iron Man. So Wrench could also be anybody. Anybody could be under that mask. It could be you, it could be a woman. It could be someone who's not white or non-binary. Like it could be anyone. And it's easier to invest in a character, to project into them, the less physically defined they are. Mm-hmm. Personality-wise, sure, people identify with Wrench in a huge way. This whole like, I'm depressed and I'm anxious and I hide behind a thing, but this kind of also his hiding behind the mask empowers him to kind of, because he's almost an extrovert if you think about it, in how he interacts with the world. But you see, without all the trappings, he's just some damaged guy. You know what I mean? And so many people who've talked to me about Wrench identify with that aspect of him. It's rare, like, oh, I love how he's a hacker, or I love how he loves, the Predator. It's about, I love how he deals with people, or how he doesn't give a shit, or how he fiercely protects the people who are close to him. But just screw you to the world attitude for the rest. You know what I mean? A lot of people identify with that feeling. You know what I mean? So I think he has a lot of appeal for that reason. And, the other characters too, but they're more specific. Like a lot of people, probably in a more profound way, identify with Josh, people who are autistic, who don't get representation.
Right. Yeah.
I've had fans who are autistic who just, I've seen letters or tweets they've sent to John just thanking him for finally, not only did Watch Dogs provide a character that they can identify with, but he was treated with respect.
Right.
He
Absolutely.
in the game in a way that they could see themselves in the game as well. You know what I mean? So I think all those little elements, those really human, relatable elements, were just so real and genuine. And, I'm super pro diversity, representation. I think that's super important, and I think it's happening more and more, and I think that's wonderful. But I find sometimes it just feels, I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but sometimes in certain specific circumstances it feels a bit forced. Like those like a poster for some product aimed at teenagers, and it's like a black guy, a Chinese girl, a white guy, and it's like, and that's great, but it's like I don't really ever see, give me like 4 black guys or something, or 2 Chinese people and a trans person, or
I call that the Power Rangers effect.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you do see that more and more also. But like when it's that apparent, I find it's harder for some people. Like I accept it, but it's harder for some people to get past that. They'll see it as tokenism or pandering, right?
Mm-hmm.
I find DedSec, it feels so organic.
Yes.
Maybe because you'd expect people who identify as outcasts or ostracized people to flock together and find kinship. I think maybe that's why it feels more organic. But there's something about I mean, I could also be very biased because I love the game in it. But I find it's they just kind of hit the right tone with DedSec. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that again is the director who doesn't have credit for kind of bringing all that together.
Amen.
Yeah. So we have 2 more questions for you if you've got time.
Yeah.
Cool. So at like this point in your career, being a little more well known, does developer just call you because like we see a lot of Ubisoft on your resume, so they have you like on speed dial? And like the games where you play multiple characters, is it just like, okay, we'll go ahead and throw Shawn on this, or do they call you in specifically to play multiple characters? And have you ever had a moment where like you get the script and you're like, you want me to do what now?
Every question you ask me, I'm like, I have a story.
Excellent.
Yes, to all those questions. You tend to ask me multiple questions that all have the same answer. That's awesome. Great questions, by the way, guys. I've done a few of these, and no disrespect to other podcasts I've done, but sometimes the same questions tend to pop up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But this guy, I like it because you're kind of delving into the process a bit more. So speed dial. Kind of. They do know me very well there. And what they do is when people work for them, I think they keep a database of like a highlight reel of work this actors have done. So when a new project comes in and a new director comes in, they're like, okay, we're doing character emotes for, I don't know, some multiplayer game. There's going to be emotes in it, let's say. So we need to do that today. So then, they'll like show them like maybe, I don't know how many, half a dozen or whatever reels and be like, Shawn's great at this and he's versatile and he can do this. This woman's really good at this. This guy's really good at this. And then the producer will go, oh, okay, we'll take this person or that person. I do think probably I get recommended more often because I work on a lot of projects. Like it's slowed down recently, but often if there's someone that's going to be like a common thread from one project to the next, it can often be me. Mm-hmm. But not in like lead or even like dialogue parts. But like, if we're doing emotes for a thing, they know, oh, Shawn's really good at expressing himself non-verbally. We got to do something that looks cool. Right. That's consistent. You got to have to strike a pose of some kind. But we also need his creativity because we don't exactly know what we want. This character might have to flip a quarterstaff around. Shawn could do that, right? Cool, right? As opposed to an actor who meets 9 out of those 10 requirements, and then they either have to cut some stuff or do it another day or bring in 2 actors. I'm not saying I'm worth 2 actors or multiple actors. I'm just saying my skill set's very well tailored to a lot of the type of jobs I get. So much more often I'll get just called in. I'll get an email from my agent that says availability check. Are you free for project Siren? Let's say they all have code names.
Right.
It's not a real project. Or is it? No, it's not. I just realized that's the exact same delivery as when I go, it might be evil. Drone there. So it'll be like, okay, Project Siren, we need Shawn for 2 days to play a soldier, to do emotes, to do living world stuff, whatever. So if it falls, within my skill set, I'll go in, and then usually I'll, again, in all modesty, do a pretty good job because I'm pretty good at this. And then the people I work with are like, he's great. So then 6 months later, hey, we got to come back, do some pickups before launch. Can we get Shawn back, please? Because he remembers the work. We liked working with him. or, I worked with you on another project 2 years ago. Now you've been promoted to head of animation for this project, so now you want me to come in. Yeah. So that'll happen. But I also submit for just regular general auditions. So, we're doing the new, whatever game. Can we see Shawn? Or my agent will submit me for Shawn would be really good as the priest, So then I'll self-tape or go and audition for the priest, and they'll either cast me or give me a callback, or sometimes, like something that happened recently, I auditioned for a lead part, didn't get it, but then a few weeks later, I got a request to audition for another character in that game. And when they're asking, it's usually a really good sign. It means they've conceived of you as that character, at least considered it, So I submitted, and I got the part. So I'm shooting that in 6 weeks, which is awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. So that's been a real boon to my career. But I also feel like I've really put in, I've gone through my paces. I've put in the time. I've paid my dues just by being present, taking all these small, I don't want to call it unglamorous roles, because to me, work is work. Mocap is mocap.
Yeah.
If I'm doing, turn 90 degrees and run. Okay, turn 180 degrees and run. Turn 90 degrees to your right and then run. Now we'll do it crouched. Now we'll do it kneeling. Now we'll do it at a jog. I'm not like, I want a lead scene with, dialogue. It's still mocap. I still enjoy it.
Right.
If it's a challenge to my creativity, which is most work, there's nothing mundane you can do in mocap, right? So if it's a challenge to my creativity, I'm happy. So, that also makes me, I think, a good person to work with, because there's never any ego involved. Nothing's ever too lowbrow for me, or, outside my comfort zone, which brings me to your third question. A script that made me go, say what? In Outlast, the first person horror game,
great game.
In Outlast 2, there were 3 I'll try to keep this PG-13. That's be hard, but I'll try. There were 3 instances that really kind of took me aback. Actually, 4. So I'll go over them quickly. Number 1, I came in to do just a voice track over some gameplay of someone walking down, running down a hallway, and then all the lockers start opening by themselves, and blood's pouring down the walls, and then the character hears something, and the player turns around, and when he turns around, there's this freaky ass demon just standing there. Right? They didn't tell me about that part, right? So I'm in the studio, and they're just playing the footage, and I'm reacting in real time, right? Because it's like a sample, like a demo.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just doing gameplay, because the game wasn't developed then. And they do that in video games. As long as it's true to the gameplay, it's no big deal. So I'm like this, and then the lockers are going, and whatever. And then the guy turns around, and I just shrieked like a terrified 4-year-old girl, the highest pitch, just. And I look through the window to the sound booth, out of the sound booth, and they're just dying, right? They're just killing themselves laughing. And they're like, oh man, too bad we didn't, you have to adjust the mic for really high pitched noises.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The mic pop so that you can use it. And I wasn't about to, it wasn't about to be authentic a second time.
Right, sure.
But that was a fun moment. Another crazy moment was when I came in. I think that was in Outlast 1. In Outlast 2, I came in to because I also did the lead in Outlast 2, which was amazing as well. I came in and I go to do the scene I'm there to do, and Simon, the director, who's the same guy who suggested me for the Deus Ex job, like I said, small community in Montreal. I'm like, so he's like, all right, I'm gonna give you some context here. I'm not gonna pretend to do Simon's accent. He's from New Zealand and has a wonderful. Imagine this with a New Zealand accent. I'm like, so what's happening exactly? He's like, oh well, this is the part where you look down and you realize you're standing in a carpet of dead babies.
Oh God!
No! And I was like, it's just like the full scope of what we were doing in the game kind of hit home, and it was understandably very disturbing.
Yes, yeah.
That's literally what you're standing on. So there was that. There was a scene where my character gets grabbed by a bunch. Spoiler alert! Big spoiler alert! Grabbed by a bunch of cultists, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he proceeds to get sexually violated. So that was
There you go.
a pretty massive acting challenge for me. Because it's not something I can, I can relate to anger, fear, joy, whatever. That's, outside of my realm of experience.
Yeah.
That's probably for the best, but yes.
But without going into details, let's just say I really committed.
Oh, God.
And then segueing from that, I had – this is a bit of a funny story, but I'll have to word this carefully. I got hired to do motion capture as well for Outlast 2. Yes, I did sections as my character, as Blake, with this woman, Erica, who played my wife. We'd put on mocap suits and like act out the cinematic scenes where, she's getting kidnapped or I'm screaming her name over and over. But once that was done, the team approached me and said, look, we want to hire you to do the mocap for everyone else in the game. All the cultists, the politic monsters, everything, because they knew I was a good physical character actor. So we went to this motion capture studio that's 7 hours outside of the city, part of a motion capture school, but they have the biggest capture stage, I think, in Quebec, at least, maybe even in Canada, but at least in the province. So those 3 really intense days of me like just bending my body and like running around and screaming and crawling on the floor and doing attacks and swings and chasing and all that was awesome. But there's a scene in the game, and I have to preface this by saying I was the only person they hired for this. So I played everybody. Okay, keep that in mind. I was everybody. So there's a scene in the game where where Blake, your character, so my character, comes across an orgy in process.
God.
Do the math, gentlemen. So so the scene in question, you witness all these people getting it on, and then stuff's happening. You can't interact with them, but it's like a cutscene, but it's in game. It's an in game of. You guys know what that is.
Yeah.
So I had to motion capture everyone in that scene. And, what's funny is I'm not someone who imposes a lot of limitations on myself as an actor. I don't have a lot of shame, I guess you could put it that way. I'm not obscene or anything, but right. I don't care. Like, I auditioned for a play the other day, like, oh, there's some nudity involved. You realize they go streaking at one point. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. Right. Like, I did a photo shoot once where I dressed up as Spider-Man because I had a long story about a Halloween costume of Spider-Man. It looked really good. And a photographer wanted to do something for, I think it was Pride Month. So he had me hang upside down and he took a photo of, the Spider-Man kissing Mary Jane in the rain. But instead it was this, I don't know what he defined himself as, but Plastic Patrick, who's this like very feminine man, but who he's not trans. But anyway, I don't want to get into specifics. I don't know them. I'm probably put my foot in my mouth. But, I had to kiss him a few times, hung upside down. And like, again, I don't care. It's like, it's for art. It's for whatever. I don't have anything. Yeah. I've never refused a job so far. Because it was outside of my comfort zone. Sure. Porn companies are going to start calling me. Listen,
right. Well, you played everybody? We need to get this guy.
Think of the money we'll save. Composite you into the scene with yourself. That being said, all this to say in a long-winded, convoluted way is that the team were very aware. I guess they were a bit embarrassed or shy about it. And I'm fully clothed. Clearly, I'm in a mocap suit. The motions I was doing were obviously suggestive. But like I'm like, okay, well, I can do a person doing this, and this is the person who's in front of them, and then I'll do a person doing this, and then, I could do a person doing this. Oh, what if there could be a woman doing this, right? And so, like, I do a bunch of stuff. Then they're like, okay, great, I think we got it. Like, wait, no, hold on. There could be a guy doing this. And, what if there's 3 people doing this? And then
I've never even heard of most of the stuff he's doing.
And I'm, like, demonstrating to them as I'm pitching the ideas. I'm like, this guy could be doing this while this person does that, right? And you could put this person here. And they're just laughing, going, yes, okay, yeah, absolutely. Just go for it, do it. So that was Shawn's fun time adventures with himself.
That's literally. So last question then, because you've been super generous with your time, and I'm glad the questions have been good for you, and not the same ones you've had to answer before. So this one might be one you're asked, but you said numerous times. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said no, those are fine too, though. Like
okay.
Questions I've had before.
So you've said numerous times throughout this, and prior to us hitting record, that you're a gamer yourself. We know. So what are you currently playing, and like, what's your game of the year so far? To kind of segue off your career for a little bit.
That is a question I love getting, even though I've gotten it before. So I'm glad you asked. Which is a great question to ask. Right now, I am into For Honor. I think it's super fun. I love fighting games. Also, I started playing it because I voiced 2 characters in it, the Conqueror and the Hitokiri. I also voiced the Japanese Ram Commander. We're talking about doing dialects. There's a good example of one.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a game match mode called Breach, there's a commander. Sometimes he's English sounding, or French sounding, actually, French dialect, but sometimes he's Japanese, and in that case, it's me. So I play a lot of For Honor. I do a lot of gaming with my friend Medea that we play on the weekends. We just go and chop people up. Rainbow Six as well. I play with her. I just started playing Sniper Elite 4 because it was a free download with PlayStation now. And I'm like, I'll try it. It looks like it's probably some cheap little shooter game, and I love it.
It's good. Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. I just finished Days Gone.
Oh, okay.
Which I really enjoyed. I love zombie games. I love the concept of the whole swarm mechanics in the game, which was really well done. Prior to that, I finished Red Dead Redemption 2. Again, fantastic game. Prior to that, God of War. And prior to that, or maybe after that, I forget the order, Spider-Man.
So you're doing work, basically.
I'm sensing a PlayStation theme here.
Yes. I'm a game on PlayStation. So my game of the year, I think it's a toss-up between Spider-Man and God of War.
Okay.
I'd never played a God of War game before, so that was a new thing for me. And the voice acting was incredible in that game. The concepts of combat's just amazing.
Yep.
And I've never in my life played a video game that made me cry within the first 2 minutes. I was like, have you guys played God of War?
Yep, I have.
The first 2 minutes with the whole thing, burial, and I was bawling my eyes out and cried a few times in the game, which is rare for me playing a video game, which shows how great they've become. But Spider-Man destroyed me at the end. Have you guys played Spider-Man?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was so into that game, and I love that game too because I was a massive fan of the Batman Arkham series.
Yes, same.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Batman. So to me, this was like the next iteration of that. It was very similar in mechanics, and which is fine. It's absolutely how you need to have a Spider-Man game. So I thought that was great as well. And another game I play a lot of is Elite Dangerous, which is a space flight game.
Oh, okay.
I'm a big fan of just heading out into space and doing my own thing. So you see a theme here is a lot of games that involve violence, I guess.
As most do now, so it's kind of tough.
I also started playing Detroit Become Human.
That's a great game.
Because my wife is not much of a gamer, but whenever I play very cinematic games, she'll sit and watch me play. And sometimes I'm like, what do you want to do? Do you want to watch movies? Like, ooh, play some Witcher or play some God of War or play some Spider-Man because she's so into the story. Because that's, games are so cinematic now. Witcher 3, also a huge fan of Witcher 3 and the Mass Effect series as well. But I could go on for quite a while. So Detroit, I was told, is such a story-driven game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, honey, that can be the next game we play together. So we went through a couple chapters the other day together. We're loving it. Really, really awesome game. And I got some other games kind of in the wings I'm waiting to get to.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to focus on 3, maybe 4 games at a time, and I tend to want to finish them before I move on to something else, to the point where I think it was Days Gone. I pre-ordered it. I couldn't wait to play, but I wasn't done whatever I was playing before.
Man, that's discipline right there.
Yes. Like, I am not touching it until I finish this game, because if I start it, I will not get back to it.
Mm-hmm.
After that game, this game's coming out. And after that game, this other game's coming out. And especially if it's a game that I want to 100%, because there's some games I do platinum if I really enjoy them, and if it's not like months of grinding, to get a trophy, I'll tend to kind of finish those off first before I move into the next one. So I tend to have a first-person shooter game that I've got going, a third-person game that I've got going at some point, some kind of racing or flight simulator game, and usually like a puzzle game and an RPG game.
It's good balance.
Oh, dang. That's like
Darkest Dungeon. I don't know if you guys have played that game.
Yep.
Probably one of my favorite games in the last 5 years.
Wow.
Like, I am a massive fan of role-playing. Like, I have a role-playing group that I role-play with every week, like tabletop role-playing.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dang.
Run a game that I've been running for 19 years now, actually.
Wow.
Holy cow.
So my role-playing fix I get from, like, tabletop. I almost never play console or computer role-playing games. I haven't played Skyrim. I haven't played Oblivion. I haven't played WoW, World of Warcraft, any of that. Just because you don't have the freedom you have with tabletop.
It's true.
But Darkest Dungeon had such a compelling story, graphics, mechanics. And again, I know I mentioned this in a lot of games, but as a voice actor, this is important to me. Voice acting is just so great. It was so compelling. I played that game, and it's an RPG, bear in mind. I played that game start to finish 4 times in a row.
Dang.
Oh, man.
I've never done that with any other game before. So, yeah, I was a massive fan of that game, and they announced a second one, so I can't wait for it to come.
Yep,
yeah.
They did. So yeah, that's kind of all we had. So I mean, thank you so much. You've been super awesome. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
So we appreciate it.
Talking to you guys, and down the line, if you guys want to chat some more, I'd be more than happy to come back and talk some more. I clearly have a lot to talk about.
Hey, we love it. I mean, here's the thing. So to kind of get off topic a little bit, the things we cover tonight is things I think a lot of people haven't heard or understand really, as far as like the motion capture process and what it takes to do this. They think like, oh, you just hop in the studio and record your lines and call it a day. Where's my check? Walk out the door. There's a lot more to it. So I can genuinely appreciate everything that you've shown here and taught us and the audience about what's going on. So I can appreciate it. It's definitely something different for us as well, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug or where people can find you and link up and follow you on the internet or elsewhere?
Nothing I can really plug without getting in trouble.
Sure.
But if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter. Just Shawn Baichoo on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well. Instagram, I'm Choobai, so my last name Baichoo, but kind of flipped. So Choobai instead of Baichoo. So I'm Choobai on Instagram, Shawn Baichoo on Twitter. I also have a fan page on Facebook, though I don't really update that super often. I'm mostly on Twitter and Instagram these days, less on Facebook. And I had a website, which was ShawnBaichoo.com, where I had like demos, photos, and updates, but it's currently down as I'm making a new one. So you can check back there later, ShawnBaichoo.com, and I should have some more stuff there. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And the most important thing is that we ask that you never stop gaming.
This has been a PSVG production. Any music, sound effects, or the like is owned by their respective copyright holders. No infringement is intended. The views expressed in this production are those of the individual contributor and may not necessarily reflect PSVG. This production may not be repurposed, reused, or redistributed without the express written consent of PSVG. PSVG is powered by patrons at patreon.com/PSVG. Become a patron to get special perks, including access to exclusive content.